Okay, so next up we've got Harleen. So Harleen doesn't have too much on her portfolio, but what she does have here looks pretty good. Oh man, Sacramento, dude, crazy. So I'll just like hide myself for a second here. Um, so environment artists, so it's very specific. We can start maybe with the mummy, which is really cool. Bring me back here, but this is pretty awesome considering like it's all of those like projecting and just working within the substance painter. I think the only thing that really sticks out to me is really tuning in those materials to try and get the surfaces to feel like the surfaces you're trying to portray. So like for example, the mummy cloth like material, you could definitely like sculpt in a height map to get some of those folds or creases to kind of overlap better. Um, and that's probably so it's that and how it that surface reads. Right now, it doesn't feel so much like cloth. Man, these details are cool though. Um, Being careful with how deep details go, as well as like the contrast and colors that you get. So like if we copy this image, bring it into Photoshop here. Oh, maybe I should just make a new there. No? What? What? Hang on. Is that? Oh, it is that. Okay. I'm like so confused. I don't get it. I thought I was clipping frames for whatever reason. Um, so going grayscale, you can see it's very busy. There's a lot of information happening around here, and there's a lot of contrast inside of those details, um, as well as like where the colors are at. Getting some better separation with the colors, um, getting this to frame a little better could help, like centering that up a little bit more, which I know is difficult because the usually I would just wipe these out and just use the old logo in the center and just call it good. Um, but thinking about how that surface is being made, if it were real, and how like is it inward? Is it a pre like for example these go inward right now, right? These details go inward, and this is like on the top. These should be on the top if I had to imagine, and maybe could even have like in the normal a bit of a curl so that they look like they're kind of trying to come up off of the fabric, and then having the fabric have more of the attributes that you would expect for a cloth. Like, see, this is really like the highlights about this wide when I think you would expect it to be much wider. Yeah, there's some resolution issues as well, for sure. But I think in the distance that we're rendering at, like this looks good. This shot is really cool. And it's more about tuning the materials. Like this is a great idea to do the mummy because you're getting this range between the material types of like what this roughness is versus this roughness, and some's metal and some isn't. It's like great. You're getting all that variety in there for free. And it's explained. So then it's just a matter of really like tuning in like what does gold metal look like? What does this kind of like greenish metal look like? Is it painted? And then if the paint chips away, then you see some of the metal exposed under it. If that's the case, then this wouldn't be rough, or this wouldn't be metalness, and then where it's chipped away it would be metalness, right? So like really tuning those in and just understanding where your materials are at from a PBR standpoint will take this and push it way over the top in quality just by getting those values tuned in. But let's look at this is a pistol. I haven't clicked on this scene yet, so now we have this Colt. This is a fictional weapon from a TV show, Supernatural. Nice. Yeah, so this is like, again, you're showing your your understanding of how Substance Painter works and really kind of like using it to make like these details, for example, those details feel really deep and really dark to me. So they really they draw your eye so heavily that they kind of feel a little artificial in like how their highlights are hitting. And the way that the metal is dirty is very strange to me. Like it doesn't feel right for some reason. Yeah. Also, the font is very deep as well. But yeah, I like the mood of the lighting. But yes, you're right. It's not really making the environment pop the way that you would expect. I guess at this angle, it's popping pretty well. I wouldn't hesitate to change the lighting direction whenever you're when you're hitting those different angles. Just do this because maybe we just dupe that and let me see what we're playing with. And that looks, so you can see how dark those lines are really makes it like stand out. And maybe not having the dark values in there would help. Um, but yeah, it's really difficult to like these shadows. See how dark these are, but then this shadow isn't that dark. There's a disparity between like the value differences in your shadows, and then like the paper is very bright, which of course I just brightened up the shot, but I just gave you the full range. Watch out for clipping. Don't hesitate to, right now I can tell that there's a vert here and here. Oh, maybe there's one here. They're very close, so like I wouldn't hesitate to add enough verts to give you the rounding that you're looking for. That way we don't see the edge, right? That helps a lot when it comes to this type of detail. But if we, yeah, it's strange. It just doesn't feel like there's enough there. Like even if the box had a light value difference where the pistol usually is sitting, that would be really cool because then you could see like, oh, that's where the pistol usually sits. If it's always on display, then you would actually see a bit of a shadow or value difference in it. Fatal, you're wondering, should the paper have thickness in a situation like this? I don't think it needs to. It's very rare that you see the thickness of paper in real life when you're even looking that closely. But I think there's a little bit of simplistic modeling when it comes into this asset. But it might be the style of like the direction you're going for. And it's more about, I would say it's more about the way your materials are reading and how you can push your materials further. It's the same as with Meat Mat, the Mummy. Let's check out this terrain material. So ground material. So you can see here, this is very like the details aren't really reading all that much. And all of the rock placement is very evenly placed out. What you can do is you can do like a, oh yeah, see there's like large clumping that's happening here. So there's so much more information happening in the, what is that, your AO, than what we're seeing when we visualize it here. So there's a very limited color palette when it comes to the rocks. So that feels a little artificial. It feels more like a fish tank rocks. Like you go and you buy a selection of rocks that you scatter in a fish tank, and so they're very similar in colors, or there's a very limited color palette. But then if you take like just looking at these maps, this is exactly why I like people to show maps, because it helps me understand where you're at in your understanding of materials. So the height map, that looks all right. Normal map looks like it's displaying correctly based off of what you've made in your height map. Your ambient occlusion, however, is extremely strong. If you were to take this texture and mip it down as it gets further away, this will turn into gray. And that means that the material will be that much more darker when it's in shadow. So you want to be like, let's copy this. image and bring it in here, and I'll show you just what I'm talking about. So like all the little AO that's happening inside here shouldn't really be there. This is also a little strange, whatever's happening here. That looks like it might be a texture that's floating or clipping and then hovering somehow. I don't know how that happens. And huh. Yeah, I'm not sure. But if I grab this and we go in and we do a levels on that, this is probably closer to what you would want ambient occlusion wise. And even so, I would say you want a lot of this to be gone. This area here, that's probably closer. But yeah, see, as we get further away, that turns into white, whereas the rest is kind of turning into gray. So if mipping were to happen, it's quartering in size every time it mips down. So you got to watch out for that. The only other thing that I wanted to highlight out with this map is right now you're not authoring your elements of your material, which is like your stones and your dirt. You're not authoring those separately. At least that's what it looks like in your roughness. So there's a little bit of a haze or a halo that's happening around here in the roughness, which means that there's some unexplained reason for this dirt material to be affected roughness wise by a rock, when I think you would only really get that effect when you have really damp mud and then a rock in it where when you step on it, it diffuses out some of the water in the mud, and then you see it kind of like change its roughness attributes temporarily. So what I would do is actually isolate these assets and actually make their roughness individually, and then compile those together afterwards. I feel like right now what you're doing is you're generating this view off of either the albedo or some other filter from your height map, and that's just not how that's not how roughness will work, right? The best way to think about roughness is that each material has its own roughness type, and then for the overall material you want to average it to kind of around the same range. That way it doesn't look really strangely out there. So what's working right now is this is all roughly in the same range. It's not like too bright or too dark in all of the elements, but all the elements are interacting in ways that don't feel natural. So what I would do is separate out all those elements, give them their own roughness values, bring them back together, and then from there, try and balance the levels of those elements individually to try and bring them into like a common range, and you'll get a much more realistic understanding, or not understanding, but you'll get a much more realistic reaction in the way that the surface is responding to lighting. And then I wanted to look at this scene just to kind of highlight this. My goal of this scene was to get more familiar with trim sheets and making materials in Substance Designer. Nice. I was inspired by the architecture of India and wanted to combine different architectural details in an environment piece. Most of the decals were used from textures.com, and I edited them in Photoshop according to the needs of the environment. I learned a lot from this piece. This piece is very strong. Maybe the weaker aspect of it is the foliage. I think if you didn't need, I don't know if you had to build this or if you built this, but if this was like, this is like secondary or tertiary to the entire environment, I think it's totally acceptable to grab like Megascans trees and just drop one in here so that you don't have to worry about it. The next thing I would look at is how dark everything is. Everything's very dark and very saturated. So from like, I wonder if there's a albedo. Yeah, so see how light these are? I think your lighting is actually very warm. Like this wall is feeling okay, but then we're getting into some questions about scale and textile density. So there's scale with like this being feeling really narrow. Then there's the simplicity of the geometry. Like these edges feel a little. These are definitely sharp, right? Getting away from those is going to be important. And man, I love the graffiti or like the drawing that's happening on there. But there is a bit of a clash of like elements that are happening. Like maybe this is correct, but it's like the colors feel like, see how dark this is? That can have that color, but it doesn't need, like the value's too dark, I feel. It's similar with the doors, and definitely the cables and the telephone pole and pipes and stuff. These are really, really dark. Those should be much lighter. So it's just, again, I think it's more of an understanding of PBR and then also scale and modeling. But this scene is, like, what's going on back there looks pretty cool. There's a little bit of weird wobbliness in the wires. Maybe that's something to look at as well. But this looks like it was a great exercise for just exploring how trim sheets can help you build spaces very quickly. It's just a matter of like tuning the color of the lighting as well as like the value of your materials in order to get things to pop more. Like if I go here and we look at the levels, you can see like I don't want to bring this too high because you're already kind of in the range. But like you can see if I bring that up a bit more, lighting wise, you're having us focus over here. But I feel like we're supposed to be looking at this, you know? So if that's the case, maybe the lighting should be coming this way and shadows should be casting along these sides. And like this inside area should be darker because of that. It feels very flat right now when it comes to the lighting direction. Or maybe we're supposed to be focusing on this. But let me see. I'll do this thing really quickly and then we'll move on to the next portfolio. I just want to see what happens with the camera raw filter. Because usually you can like shift the temperature of an image pretty well. I just want to see what happens here. Yeah, dude, look how much more dynamic that is. Just like shifting the temperature up. Or down rather. Cooler. So now you're getting, this is still warm, but now this structure pops out separately. Anything that's in direct light is getting some pretty cool lighting. It might be a little strong. But yeah, I think this is, honestly, this is probably, this is, to me, is showing the most growth in your skill set when it comes to being an environment artist. I want to see, I'm going to follow you because I want to see the next environment that you make. And I hope that you'll post on in the Discord, because I think a lot of the times we have people in the Discord that are lurking, and lurking is fine. You don't have to be like commonly chatting, but the best way to grow as an artist is to just be super active in a community somewhere. It doesn't have to be active in general chat. It's active in feedback and getting critiques and getting people's eyes on stuff. But this is great. This shows some great growth happening from like an environment artist standpoint. And you're doing a lot of like nice little detail propping around here. It's just it's your materials, modeling, and making sure your scale is good. And then your lighting to try and make sure that we're focusing on the right things. Awesome. Let's say, I don't know if it's Harleen, but thank you for, if I'm saying that right, but yeah, thank you for sharing your portfolio.